Hi, welcome to Silent Generation. I'm Joseph.
I'm Nathan.
And this week's episode is on metrosexuals. Metrosexual was a portmanteau of the words metropolitan and heterosexual, coined by Mark Simpson, a gay English journalist. He coined the term way back in the 90s, but it really took off in the mid-2000s. And it was a way of kind of calling out and bringing attention to men who were taking more care of their hygiene and participating more as fashion consumers.
Yeah. And I think this episode's going to be a good one because it's a good blend of both urbanism and fashion.
Yeah.
This one, it's way more fashion than what we explored with flâneur and Yuppies, but this is sort of the third iteration of the men moving to cities phenomenon and becoming more stylish.
Yeah, there's a big through line through all of this. It also kind of touches on like the logo prep era we talked about back in that episode. Yeah, basically whenever men start moving to cities and caring about themselves, like the media machine freaks out and like something has to be done and a word must be generated or else we have no way of dealing with it.
Yeah, someone's got to come out with a good think piece. But before we delve into this further, I wanted to start out with a call to action. We don't do this very often, but we want to ask our audience to do a couple of things to try to help Silent Generation get bigger. So 4 things you could do: rate us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, other places. You can send an episode to a friend. Think of someone who might like your favorite episode, send it to them. You can follow us on Instagram. And then the 4th one, the big one, you can also become a subscriber on Patreon.
Yeah. Thank you for keeping the Instagram up to date.
Yeah.
That is like, I don't know. I realize that's hard. At my company, we had like a very informal social media where we just put it on one of the designers and she's like, this takes so much time. Like, I don't want to complain about it, but like, geez. Like,
yeah. No, in today's world, in order to succeed, you need to generally make content to promote your content. And I see this with musicians, like they spend so much time trying to make TikTok videos that go viral in order to make their songs go viral. But yeah, it's hard when you're a creator trying to find the time for that when you have everything else to worry about with us with our podcast episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah, sending episodes you like to your friends will help us.
Yes. And it's nice when people organically share stuff so we don't have to make like AI slop content of using our episode content to try and go viral. I don't know, but I have thought about doing like, Subway Surfers in the background and then the flâneur episode audio over it. No, we shouldn't do that.
Something I thought about doing that would be way too expensive is getting Silent Generation CTA ads.
That's amazing. That's so good.
But I looked it up and the ad campaigns start at like $4,000.
Oh, man. I'm trying to think of the amount where I'd go for that. But yeah, it's pretty, it's $40 is what I think.
Yeah, it's not cheap. So back to metrosexual. So as you mentioned, the term was coined by Mark Simpson, an English journalist. And we read 3 different articles he wrote that introduced the term, popularized it, and then reflected on it. The first one in 1994, we can start with that. That's the Here Come the Mirror Men, Why the Future is Metrosexual article.
Yeah, so in this one, he focused a lot about kind of consumerism. And he kind of speaks vaguely about like them being the companies that make things that need to be consumed, and then the advertising and marketing arms of those companies that get it to the people. And he was saying that like men had it too good for too long, basically, with not spending tons of their disposable income on non-essential fashion things.
Yeah, the article kind of felt like he was just trying to name drop as many luxury brands as he could.
Yeah, it feels like a Bret Easton Ellis book in that way.
Yeah. But this didn't take off for whatever reason. I think a big reason was because his follow-up article in 2002, Meet the Metrosexual, in that one, he calls out, or as he says, he outs actual celebrities who he calls metrosexual, and he points out things they did that were overtly or could be implied to be gay.
Yeah.
And then I think it was just so salacious, that's why it got more attention.
Yeah. I think he's kind of playing with the misunderstanding of people thinking like, oh, are these guys gay? And the point is like, no, they're not. They're just like fashion conscious, narcissistic, as he accuses a lot of people of being consumers. But yeah, I also think that in 1994, they were just too much inside the valence of yuppie discourse. Like the people, like, I don't think the media was done with that yet. They weren't ready to move on enough. And then in 2002 and 4, that kind of like was more the era.
Yeah. With the second article he published, he does have this idea that I do find interesting where he talks about how basically for the metrosexual fad to occur, men needed to feminize in their consumer habits in order to truly become consumers. He says, for some time now, old-fashioned, reproductive, repressed, unmoisturized heterosexuality has been given the pink slip by consumer capitalism. The stoic, self-denying, modest straight male didn't shop enough. His role was to earn money for his wife to spend. And I find this interesting because we've explored things on our podcast and other episodes that show how you can like increase consumption in masculine ways. Like with hunting fashion, we talked about how, you know, if you're a hunter, you might buy multiple sets of the same gear and different camo patterns in order to then hunt multiple times a year. And then also like for prepping, the whole act of prepping is like fantasizing about SHTF scenarios or doomsday scenarios where you then buy more than you need just in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, I get where he's coming at with this, but like, are men really drastically that lower of spenders than women on like non-essentials? Like men, I believe men have always had hobbies they probably like to spend their money on. I think maybe now men are beset by more hobbies than ever and like more ways to separate you from your money, I guess. Like guys who collect Funko Pops or whatever. The ultimate non-essential, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for certain guys, they've continued their consumer habits from childhood into adulthood. But those were the guys that were never going to pick up like more masculine hobbies in the first place. Because you mentioned something about how in your family, your dad was the one with more expensive hobbies.
Oh, yeah. No, my dad got into recreational flying. He was into guns. He was into reloading ammunition, which is where you save the shells and you reload the powder. That actually is a way to save money, I guess, in a roundabout way. And I'm sure that's how he sold it to himself. But yeah, my mom's hobby was just jewelry. And I feel like that was actually, she wasn't buying super fancy stuff. I think it was pretty low material cost, just a lot of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, your family?
My family, my mom was not a big spender. And she had an interesting reason. It's because my dad is a photographer. He would ask her to go out and buy things for photo shoots. We'd be like, I need a 4-inch red vase. And she'd go all throughout the city to every mall. She'd have to go to Merchandise Mart pretty often. And so she just like hated shopping by the time I was born. And I probably only went to malls like a half dozen times as a kid because she hated them.
Yeah, no, that sounds like the worst shopping task. Like that's just such a, I don't know, like whenever I need to find like a weird thing, construction/furnishing wise, like thank God for Google and the nearby button on there too. Like I feel like one of my weird skills is sourcing things. But no, in the olden days, that would have been terrible. I hated that.
There are some cool things that my family has that are a result of that era though. Like my dad has this Bozo the Clown mug that he absolutely loves. And it's kind of a miracle it's never been broken because, you know, we grew up in a house with 6 kids and a ton of animals.
No, like any kind of ceramic is just...
My sister once made the joke that like, you know, if he has a guardian angel, its job is protecting that cup and that's all I can focus on.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Man. This is also interesting for me to read about with, you know, regards to men's consumption habits, because in my mind, I think I have this very rose-colored nostalgic view of an era when men dressed better, you know, up until the like late 70s, things getting bad in the 80s and kind of bottoming out in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
But this era of well-dressed men, they weren't going to all these beautiful haberdasheries of stuff. It was their wives buying stuff at department stores. When they were buying stuff for themselves, they'd also get, you know, like a new set of shirts. They'd know their husband's size. They'd buy him a hat or ties and stuff. But not to take too much credit away from men, like there is a lot of style and there's a lot of thought that goes into how you wear things and not just what you're wearing.
Yeah. I found that interesting to think about too, because this era around when Mark Simpson is talking about metrosexuals, men were assumed by default to be slobs. And that kind of coincided with higher divorce rates and lower marriage rates. Yeah. And so it does make sense that like a certain proportion of the male population in the 50s, they were being dressed by their wives. And then by the time it was the 2000s, they weren't. And they were just walking around looking like slobs.
It's also the pushing back of marriage age for men as well, too.
Yeah.
You're spending like, because before you'd have a very, very small period. If you were like, you know, a professional man, you have a very small period after college and before marriage. And then as a working class guy, you'd probably just move that up 4 years and probably get married when you're 19 or 20. So you wouldn't have a big period of trying to dress yourself. Where like here, as I'm pushing 30 soon, I'm getting very sensitive about my 29th birthday coming up. You spend a whole decade trying to not look like a slob.
Yeah. You know, thinking about the themes of this week, I actually realized it's kind of odd that gay men are the best dressed demographic, because it's rare for us to encounter each other in public. We're a small demographic. If you're a straight man or a straight woman, you walk out the door, half the people you run into, they're like a potential romantic interest. So it's like they actually have more reason to look good, and they don't dress that way.
It's funny. Like, I guess maybe it's living in a big city, but like, I feel like I do see a lot of gay people. I don't know, just walking around. Sometimes I do like have this thought in my head, and I'm like, man, sometimes Chicago looks exactly like what Fox News thinks it looks like. Like, just like like being at like the Belmont Red Line station, there's like a whole gang of gay guys getting ready to go out. Like, that of course makes sense. You're in Boys Town, you're gonna see that kind of thing. But it's like, this is what they think liberal cities are like. No, I don't know if I told you this, but I was eating at this fancy food court at 900 North Michigan, and I saw a gay priest. Like, unless his mannerisms were just like that, I'm gonna say. But I was like, oh wow, that's like the joke everyone makes, but he's just real. He's doing it.
Well, could you tell if they were a Catholic priest?
Yeah, because
there are some denominations, non-Catholic ones, where they look vaguely like Catholic priests, but they can be openly gay as clergymen. Like, there's an episode of Queer Eye, which we'll get to later, in one of the later seasons, where there's this gay clergyman who redo his wardrobe.
So this is very close to like Loyola's downtown campus, so Catholic, but also it's next to that Presbyterian church over there too. So he was wearing the I think the very unflattering black shirt with the short sleeves. I think that's a rough look for priests. I think they got to go for the long sleeve one. But yeah, that's interesting. But that begs the question too. Okay, so what did metrosexuals look like? So a good reference point for this are the images that Mark Simpson included in his 2002 article. He has pictures. A lot of them are David Beckham. He also includes the Patrick Bateman picture, right? Yeah, which we all think of. I mean, this is a movie from the 2000s. It's about like 80s yuppies. Like, we include him like squarely in the yuppie tradition.
And then Simpson did include a picture of Eminem, which I think is really wrong, because Eminem is not someone who ever would have been interpreted as a gay guy.
No.
He would beat me up.
Yeah. I mean, maybe in just like kind of how, you kind of forget how pretty Eminem is. I think he's a good looking guy.
He's hot, but he's not like...
No, yeah, he's in like a bad boy kind of thing, which I don't think metrosexuals read as bad boy at all. Except for David Beckham having tattoos, I guess, which is...
I wouldn't think of David Beckham as a bad boy. I mean, I didn't know much about him before this week because I'm not British and I'm also not into sports. But yeah, just seeing like pictures of him in editorials and how he even posed for a gay magazine, Attitude, which prompted Simpson to write this article. Like, he was a pretty boy.
That reminds me of Tom Selleck, the actor known for his very masculine with a mustache. He was on Magnum P.I. And he posed for Playgirl, which is like very much a gay magazine, kind of like LARPing as a women's magazine. And he believed it. He actually thought it was for women, and he was apparently very shocked when he learned that it was basically gay. So that just, I guess that, like, but Beckham was actually aware of it and still went through with it.
You know who else posed for Playgirl? It's like Sarah Palin's daughter's baby daddy did.
Rough. Oh man, that like, it gave me like an aftershock of like the late 2000s of like, all the like concern around Sarah Palin's family life. I do like the conspiracy theory that it's actually Sarah Palin's kid. Yeah, when her daughter had like that teenage pregnancy. Oh. Yeah, the theory is that it's actually Sarah Palin's. Yeah. No,
I wonder, was that happening on the campaign trail? Like, maybe Sarah Palin was pregnant secretly the whole time?
Yeah, that's like what the insinuations are, but I don't know. It's got the same tone as like the Brigitte Macron conspiracy theories and stuff. I'm just like, find something else to think about. Like, even if you're right, at what great cost to your life?
I don't know. I think that the conspiracy theories about politicians are some of the most fun ones. I like those the most. But but back to David Beckham. So what makes him look like a metrosexual? I think it's that he has this like very clean cut look. He's tan, kind of hairless, nice teeth. If you think of just like a celebrity, I think just a mid-2000s celebrity would look like this by default. And that's what straight men were trying to emulate. I don't know if it's as much gay men.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of an exporting of a certain like Hollywood Californian look. I mean, we have to understand that like Mark Simpson is writing these, I think, from a very like British and European
Yes.
perspective. I think all these things we're going to say about like metrosexual, like fashion and culture and all that stuff is really like through this, whatever it was stronger in Europe, a little softer in America, I think.
And something he mentions in the article that was a bit surprising to me is he uses David Beckham wearing a sarong as an example of metrosexuality. Because I don't think of metrosexuality as involving like gender bending fashion.
Yeah.
That feels like, you know, something that happened later. But those pictures of David Beckham in the sarong, they're from 1998. And that feels more like it could happen in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Gender bending, I think, swings back and forth. Like you have the kind of like 70s men going femme, David Bowie kind of stuff. 80s, you have women wearing shoulder pads to kind of like muscle their way into the office and into working life. And I guess in the 90s, it was David Beckham wearing a sarong.
Yeah. Or like, what's his name? Will Smith in a crop top.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen those pics. But yeah, it's surprising to me because I think of the 2000s as being such an anti-gay time, because I think there was a lot of backlash before the gay rights movement. People were very strongly like against the idea of men looking feminine.
Yeah. I think about the Seinfeld episode where this journalist mistakenly thinks that Jerry is gay, and Jerry's trying to defend himself against the allegations, but he keeps on saying, not that there's anything wrong with that. He keeps on like trying to show that he's not being homophobic in any way. And then you think about just like 2000s sex comedies, and I think it's the Farrelly brothers, like those directors who made all those like kind of crass 2000s Will Ferrell vehicles. I think that's right. But that style of humor was just the 2000s to a T. Yeah, I felt like it was a swinging back.
Sometimes I wish I could access that stuff. There's something Freudian, but I wish I could go on YouTube and like hear anti-gay rants. Like, you know, but they've all been purged.
Yeah. If you're trying to study 2000s homophobia, yeah, grown men calling Justin Bieber gay, getting really mad about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why did this term resonate in 2002 but not in 1994? So Mark Simpson answered this himself in a later article, Metro Daddy Speaks, but basically he thought it was because he outed celebrities, you know, like as I mentioned, it was just by calling like David Beckham, Brad Pitt, Spider-Man gay, it generated more buzz.
Even Spider-Man, no one was safe from Mark Simpson at this time. He was really just shooting from the hip. Yeah, you can just tell his writing style is this very like, bet I wouldn't say that kind of.
Yeah, it's very edgy.
Yeah, edgy. And it's much edgier in the 2000s than the 90s. He uses really like crass metaphors of like David Beckham, like sucking corporate, you know. And just, I don't know, he's very attention grabbing, but he really like succeeded, I think. But I think his like kind of like, yeah, spraying from the hip approach to takes, I mean, he's going to land something eventually, you know? If you're calling everything gay, like something's going to be gay.
I mean, I do think he was onto something. I think he correctly identified that men were starting to care about their appearance more. But I do, back to the question I posed, I have a theory, which is just that like maybe the term caught on in 2002, but not 1994. Because cities, people were still abandoning them in the 90s. You know, crime rates and homicide rates were peaking then. And then in the 2000s, people were moving back. And so the urban angle, which he doesn't really emphasize, it was there in a stronger way. Yeah. Because I do think it's true that people, once they move to cities, they care about how they look more. Like when people visit, say, Paris or New York City, they bring their best clothes because you're out in the public.
Yeah. I mean, there was just, you know, from the Yuppies era onwards, this was people rediscovering cities and moving downtown. Yeah. This is the era of condos and like living in a high rise and kind of retooling cities after suburban. I would say like after the suburban experiment failed. That's not true. People still love living in suburbs and seek them out and stuff.
Reverse white flight. That's the term I've heard.
Yeah. That people coming back in. And I think it's like very different in America and Europe, but it kind of like united in the 2000s. I've tried to express this before because living in Germany in the early 2000s, I had British TV and I feel like I was very like getting British pop culture like seared into my eyeballs. But it felt like, you know, if in the 90s America was dealing with like the crack epidemic and like, yeah, like hollowing out of cities, England was also just kind of generally ramping up, kind of still recovering from World War II in a sense, and also like the oil crisis and stuff. So by the 2000s, they were like catching up to us, and it felt like we were both on the same page of like, oh yeah, we're both consumerist economies driven by services and the finance sector.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it was especially European in part because Europe is more urbanized. Their cities have higher population densities.
Yeah.
That helps a lot.
Yeah. I also have nothing to back this up, but I feel like where America has kind of more successfully jettisoned the working class from their cities, I feel like Europe has been better at not doing that. You know, that you'll have a construction worker who lives in an apartment, you know, on a third floor walk up, where in America, a construction worker will do everything he can to live in a single family home in the suburbs.
I mean, I think it depends. Like I've heard about how a lot of working class areas of London, there's very few people that remain. But if your city hasn't become a tax haven and there aren't people investing in, you know, luxury condos, it probably really is truer. Yeah. Yeah. And then did you want to close out with that quote from the 2004 Mark Simpson article?
Yeah, this isn't very generative in the context of our podcast, but I just think that this is crazy, so I need to say it out loud. This is just direct quote from Mark Simpson. Metrosexuality is the sensibility of the new matriarchy. It's post-Oedipal. Dad is largely out of the picture, replaced by Nike and PlayStation. The metrosexual family romance, the cradle of male narcissism, is just Junior and an adoring mom. It's why, from a certain perspective, Italians have been metrosexual for years. Wildest landing note here, because he's putting stuff in the reader's mind. He's like, you know, like since it's all about mothers, clearly Italians are gay. It's like, okay, you've made a jump here. I'm able to follow you, but only because you're playing on ethnic stereotypes about Italians loving their moms. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but do you think there's truth to the idea that men without fathers overcompensate in their male grooming since they have to teach themselves?
I think that is something. I think I fall into that category. I mean, I lost my dad when I was 13, and that's right when you start, like, you know, having to shave and all that stuff. And I've always been, like, very well groomed. But I think it's kind of a way of me, like, showing myself and the outside world being like, hey, we're staying the course. Everything's fine. I'm a well groomed man.
Because, you know, as I mentioned a few moments ago, you know, family, like nuclear families were becoming less common. So there must have also been more men who were like, I have to teach myself now. Yeah. But in my family, actually, you know, my dad, he's kind of a slob.
Oh, I hope he doesn't listen to that.
But no, I mean, my family will joke. My siblings will call him a bear. But I feel like I'm still kind of learning. I'm rough around the edges. Like I tell people sometimes, like, if you notice me doing something that I should not be doing, like, please tell me.
I was saying that about my table manners. I feel like for the vibes I give off, my table manners could be better. Sometimes I put my elbows on there, you know? But it's just, I don't know. I think it's charming, actually. I think it makes me seem less stuffy. Yeah. But no, I think maybe for you, it's like you don't want to seem as like an overgroomed gay guy, you know? You want to seem a little bit scruffy.
Yeah, because I think if people look too perfect, they start to look like celebrities and they don't quite look human. I think that past a certain point, you look artificial. And for me, like, I don't want to look too perfect. Like, for example, I've never had braces. I have a chip in one of my teeth.
Whoa.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
It's right there. It's tiny. That's part of why.
Jeez, you have great teeth genetics. I'm getting angry looking at you right now. Do you know I had 2 sets? I had headgear at one point.
You had headgear?
Yeah, it's not I'd wear it around, but at night I had to wear headgear that would pull my teeth back.
Yeah. Well, I have other problems. I have like sleep apnea. I wear.
Okay, me too, buddy. I'm just jealous of your perfect teeth.
But no, it's like I don't want to look too perfect. Like I would never thread my eyebrows or whatever. But yeah, anyway, did you have a point?
No, I admire your like wabi-sabi sense of like loving the imperfect, because I feel like I deny it, but I have light like looks-maxing tendencies. Someone, a friend of a friend who listened to the podcast said like, you know, it's crazy that Joseph's not gay. I've never met a straight guy who cares this much about his appearance. And I'm like, that's not supposed to come through. You're supposed to listen to the urbanist parts, not deep narcissism.
Yeah. On narcissism. We can maybe talk about that now because throughout the article, he talks about how the metrosexual is a narcissist. And that's one of my biggest critiques with him, because one thing, we'll get into this later, it makes it harder to just differentiate the metrosexual from the yuppie if he's calling them also narcissists. But also, I think it's very unfair, because men at the time did need to focus on their appearance. Making that seem like they're bad people or like self-obsessed, it's foreign to me as someone in the current digital era. It's like, no, it's okay to care about your appearance. And it's actually a good thing if men were like focusing on their hygiene.
Yeah, I think he like kind of suffers from a lack of like depth and context history-wise. I think he was acting like the way things were in the 90s were like a permanent state of man. You know, that like the Slav is our natural state, and that this is some kind of crazy aberration.
Yeah.
There was one, and kind of only one, video I saw this that you sent that was this like examination of the metrosexuals, like through a local news article, which is a really funny format for anything. Because it's like, isn't there a car crash you guys should be like covering right now? Or like, I don't know, a cute dog that's befriended a cow. Like that's the kind of stuff I think local news covers. But they draw this line between like the suave, debonair, like Hollywood icons of the 50s and 60s in the golden age, through to metrosexuality. And I didn't see anything else kind of connecting that, because that's the period of masculinity I'm a big fan of, you know. But no, like from Mark Simpson's perspective, like men have always been just like these pigs who don't want to spend any money or look nice, and then suddenly they've all changed. They've moved to cities and they're shopping.
Yeah. I think I don't fully like his analysis, but I think his trend spotting was correct, and I'm thankful that he coined the term metrosexual, because it led to some cool things like queer for the straight guy. But before we go into that, we can talk about like the components of the metrosexual. We can start out with clothes and designer dress shirts.
Yeah, he mentions these, but this was kind of like the first thing I wanted to talk about, I think, in identifying the metrosexual. Because as someone who spends a lot of time on eBay, it's not what I'm looking for, it's what I'm not looking for. Like I search reductively in eBay. I add a minus before terms, which lets you sort out things. Because really this period got crazy with like dress shirts with graphic designs on them, or with like really loud details. Like you turn up the cuffs and there's like a fun design on the inside. I noticed in Modern Family, the fat gay guy, he's always wearing those type of shirts. So when I see him on eBay, I'm like, oh, it's that guy from Modern Family type shirts.
Do you think that Express is a metrosexual brand?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I think it might be like later time-wise. I don't know how old it is. But it's like a kind of club guy. Yeah. Like heavily gelled hair, 2000s guy.
I feel like it fits in because the men I met who like to shop at Express, they're typically the ones who want to dress a bit nicer than their friends.
Yeah. But they're like it's still like deliberately casual. Like it's dress shirts, but never a jacket. You know, it's like not wanting to seem stuffy. If anything, the shirt is very unbuttoned, you know, and very tight.
Yeah, because Mark Simpson, he talks about how straight men started to dress like gay men, but it never got especially loud. Like I think of it being in the more express way, where it was just a bit more formal. It wasn't typically like bright colors. When I think though about like a really gay outfit from the 2000s, I think about, do you know the Congressman Aaron Schock?
No.
He was this gay congressman who was closeted at the time, but he's best known for having redecorated his office to look like Downton Abbey. And that caused a stir, and then he lost re-election or had to leave. But he wore this outfit that you just pulled up, and it's of him in like white pants, a turquoise belt, and a pink gingham shirt.
Oh, God. That is so... Resigns after being caught robbing taxpayers. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And I think he's kind of wearing skinny jeans in that pic.
No, that's really loud. That's crazy. When I picture metrosexual outfits, I kind of picture from the movie Zoolander. In the beginning, all of his model friends, and they're all wearing like crazy bright stuff and like crop tops and mesh shirts and all that.
Yeah. Zoolander came out a bit before this trend was identified, though, in 2001. But I do feel like it captures that, though.
I always remember it came out in 2001 because I heard the fact that its box office was really bad due to 9/11. Like America wasn't ready to laugh yet, basically.
But it got a sequel, I think. So
it went crazy on DVD sales. Oh, okay. That's the thing. It did reach a lot of people. Eventually, my family loved that movie. And it got a very cringe sequel in the 2010s.
But do you think people started to wear skinny jeans this early?
I need to kind of figure this out. I guess we might have to like get it down to a year almost, because when women remember Y2K, they think baggy.
Yeah.
You know, like hip hop videos, baggy jeans, or maybe skinny up top and low rise for women, but then flared at the bottom. That was also Y2K. I guess skinny jeans really didn't kick into gear until past 2005, maybe,
Yeah.
I think.
Because I think of like the 2000s as being baggy pants first in the rapper way, like sagging. And then skinny jeans came after that, probably around 2009. But yeah, the queer eye for the straight guy version of like men's pants they should be wearing, I feel like probably was a bit tighter than that. They weren't baggy. Yeah. But I don't think they were quite skinny jeans.
I'm picturing like male celebrities wearing jeans and a sport coat on the red carpet. And the jeans are not skinny yet. No, they are kind of baggy. And like, but they're not like a high-waisted straight cut. They're just kind of bad. They're just kind of like vaguely like middle everything. Like middle rise, middle fit, middle blue, and just not great.
Yeah. And then on accessories, so men didn't wear too many accessories, partly because people were dressed pretty basic in this era. But if you wore just a necklace, I feel like your friends would have called you metrosexual.
Oh yeah. Loud necklaces, jewelry of any kind. I remember being in a restaurant in Germany in what must have been like 2003 or 4, and my dad pointing out we're the only men not wearing earrings, because that was just how it was in Germany back then.
Yeah. But I do think that the way gay men dressed in this era, I really love it, honestly. I think about like the Chris Crocker, Milo Yiannopoulos, and then Bruno from the Sacha Baron Cohen film. Like that version of gay men's fashion where they're wearing a ton of jewelry and just like, I feel like there's something very combative about it. Like they're trying to be provocative, but not in a like slutty way to get attention from other men. It was like they wanted to outwardly be gay and get into fights in a grocery store.
Yeah. No, I forgot how like out there Milo Yiannopoulos could get. That was a lot of pearls on that guy.
Yeah, because it's not necessarily that he got big in this time period, but he looked outdated by the time he got famous.
Yeah, he's like
he never stopped dressing that
people
way.
get frozen in a certain era sometimes. Yeah, people get frozen in like the period they became famous, or like the period they got money, you know, and they just like, I think they're like, oh, this is why. Like it's like a good luck charm kind of thing, or a superstition. Like, yeah, I'll just keep on dressing like this.
Yeah. Another thing metrosexuals would wear too is sunglasses. Not in the Y2K way as much, but I love seeing a nice picture of a 2000s person in like designer sunglasses, and you can just tell they felt cool.
Yeah. Scarves. Yeah. Scarves are very big. In high school, like for superlatives, I thought I was going to get best dressed for guys, but I lost to a guy who wore a lot of scarves. And I always kind of chalked it up to that in my mind of like, can't compete against him and his scarves, you know, but we're in Las Vegas. What do you need a scarf for? Like it's performative.
I didn't know you dressed that well in high school. I thought you mostly started to become more stylish post-college.
I thought so too, but I don't know. My mom sent me a photo of me like senior year, and I look like this preppy little shit. I'm like, oh yeah, I did. I've been this annoying for a while, I guess.
Yeah.
And then to top it off on metrosexual wear, very thin jackets. I think just very perfunctory, kind of like a leather jacket that you couldn't actually ride a motorcycle in, or a flimsy knockoff of a military jacket. I think that fits into this.
Yeah, I feel like this is where the California angle comes in, because I oftentimes see this where when you see a Californian wearing a hoodie or a jacket, oftentimes it's a bit too tight or a bit too baggy and it looks too new. And I feel like with metrosexuals, they were wearing it in a similar way where it was about the outfit. It wasn't for any functional outerwear reason.
And you'd like wear it inside too. I think it's like a jacket that you would keep on for the rest of the night.
And it's like the type of thing where like, regardless of if you're getting too hot or too cold, you keep it on because you're like, no, it's part of the outfit.
It completes the outfit. I can't take it off. Yeah.
And then I think an important element too is skincare. And I associate this with hairlessness and tanning. You know, in our episode with Thought Topics, Nick had talked a bit about like how the type of gay guy that goes to Mykonos is the type where they have really strong opinions on body hair. Yeah. I'm the same way as Nick, where like I kind of don't like when people have strong opinions on body hair because you can't really control it. You should just let it be.
Mm-hmm. Like meaning one way or the other. Like a guy should be waxed or he should be turning into a bear at any moment.
Yeah. Either's fine. You know, it is the wabi-sabi thing. It's like, let yourself be
whatever
how
you got,
naturally
work with
are.
what you have. Yeah. Yeah. They also brought up when we were with the thought topics guys that like straight men nowadays are like clean shaven and sleek, and then gay men are like a little slobby and hairy and prickly and stuff.
Yeah, gay guys are trying to look like straight men are trying to look like gay guys, as this whole episode is going to
I feel like it's like these two sine waves that are always kind of like going up and down, and they meet in the middle in this period. I would say
that's a good point.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, they both looked like each other. Interesting.
Yeah,
because then right after this, there's the backlash, which we'll get to with retrosexuals.
Yeah.
But on tanning, when I think about like tan men, Tom Daly comes to mind, the British diver, because I feel like he's kind of stuck in time in terms of the standard of beauty for this period, where he has like spiky hair, bright white teeth, tan skin. He's completely hairless, and he looks kind of uncanny now in today's world. It looks too artificial.
It's the what's his name, Ryan Seacrest type deal, the host of American Idol. I brought up that I work with this one subcontractor who is like holding on to that look like within an inch of his life. And it is a little uncanny. It is just like, these are all like, you know, it's just like tan people tend to look a little healthier and better, and white teeth is a sign of health. But if you have like all of those components, like they shouldn't all be together in the same frame. Then it kind of, the contrast between the teeth and the skin becomes a bit much.
If you're getting all of those treatments, you know, going to tanning salons, going to teeth whitening appointments, going to get your body waxed, that's a lot, and it shows.
I feel like another third skincare thing is, I think exfoliation came under fire a lot here. Mark Simpson beats on it a lot. I guess it's mentioned in American Psycho during his whole skincare routine thing.
Like it's a sign of vanity.
Yeah, it's like men are literally scraping their skin off to look prettier.
You know, I searched through all three articles and I didn't find the word tan anywhere in any of them. But it feels like this was when tanning got big.
Yeah.
There's so many micro trends throughout this episode where I kept going to Google Trends to be like, okay, when did this peak?
It feels like it's always kind of been, I don't know, because it's like tanning. I think about the LA Tan logo, which is stuck in like late 80s. 90s kind of, so it's like been a presence, but it's like it feels like it's two worlds. There's like people who tan and people who don't. You know, like I've heard that New York people make fun of Chicagoans for still tanning, like that the classic like North Side Wrigleyville girl is like tanned like hell, and then in New York like the more natural European look is more in. But then you say European, but then the classic trashy British thing is also to be too tanned. That's like déclassé, but
And then did you want to talk about being in touch with your emotions?
Yeah, that exact phrase with like very little modification pops up a lot in writings on metrosexuals. And we'll talk about the retrosexual thing, but yeah, men saying, no, I don't want to be in touch with my emotions. I think this is, I mean, it's the hardest to quantify. You can look at photos in the period and see like, oh yeah, guys, we're wearing a lot of dumb scarves, but you can't tell if they were being more open in their emotions back then. But I think this was, just a general period of, men aren't just like single purpose money earning machines. They have more to them, an interiority.
I also think of it as being this brief period where you did have a bit more freedom to look gay without being called gay before the 2008, Proposition 8, like anti-gay backlash. But I don't know though that like the phrase being in touch with your emotions is the right way to put it, because it's more so about being free to express them. I imagine that even the guys who like won't tell you how they're feeling know how they're feeling.
I don't know. I think people vary in like how much of an interior life they have.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Like, I don't know that phrase, like everyone should be in therapy. No, I've met people who don't need it. I've met people who don't have any like worries or anything. I'm sure they feel sad and they feel happy and all that, but they wouldn't greatly benefit from it.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like broadening this to lifestyle, in terms of what the metrosexual man does in terms of hobbies, preferences, things besides like just straight consumption, it's hard to find like what are these guys doing? I think cooking could be something here, kind of in the, Queer Eye sense of like, okay, we're going to improve every part of this man's life. There's home, dressing, cooking is kind of drafted into that. But I think this was a period also of a kind of like broification of cooking as well. This was Anthony Bourdain. This was Gordon Ramsay, Marco Pierre White as well. Less known over in America versus England.
My dad got really obsessed with Food Network in this period.
Mm-hmm.
And
my
that's
dad
when
too.
he started to get into cooking.
Yeah, Alton Brown for my dad, who's not in the metrosexual thing, even though he does wear a lot of bow ties, which I feel like could be caught up in this. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it would be. The bar was low to get called a metrosexual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, bow ties. I'm picturing the cooking guy from Queer Eye. Wouldn't he wear a lot of bow ties? I think from original.
Queer Eye for the straight guy.
That guy. Yeah, and he was a Food Network guy as well too.
Oh, he was.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's his connection. Or Bravo, I forget.
Yeah, one of the two.
Yeah.
But yeah. So now we can get into the differences between metrosexuals, yuppies, and flâneurs. Because when I came up with the idea for this week's episode, it was because actually someone had referenced you being a metrosexual.
Who said that?
But
oh man. Wait, for people who maybe don't remember, didn't listen to the first episode, flâneur is the concept introduced by Charles Baudelaire in the 1800s, talking about men in cities who were kind of like active participants in the city, who saw the active existing in the city as like a source of creative inspiration and a part of a new fiber of life.
Yeah. And flâneurs got branded as gay, more often than yuppies did, which is the next iteration. Yeah. Yuppies in the 80s, they were trying to climb the corporate ladder. They started to dress better in order to get promotions and then display their wealth. And that's a lot straighter than the other two. But it was interesting to, think of this topic, realize it really fit with Silent Generation, and then realize it fit into our first episode and our most downloaded episode, which is the Yuppies episode.
Yeah. It's just, whenever men move to cities with a certain amount of intent, it must be studied.
Yeah. So what's the through line here? Why did 3 different people, 3 different times come up with this term?
I think that it's maybe like, I don't know, whenever men aren't farming or working in a factory, what the hell are they doing? Like, that's what the examination is coming from.
Yeah. I think it's just when people start moving back to them, it's you have people to dress up for. The flâneur, the poets who would write about them, they talk about how the going out and observing others and being observed was this really like important pastime for people who had nothing to do before radio even existed.
Yeah. And wow. That's hard to think about.
Yeah. And all 3 of these are also like pre-internet. Not metrosexuals really. No, but it was before the social media era.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mark Simpson addresses the kind of like overlap with yuppies, and he says, yuppies, anyway, are now a defunct and meaningless category because since the 80s, everyone in the Western world has become one or wants to be one. And I guess in that sense, like yuppie is indistinguishable from like professional, like knowledge class worker in that sense. And he's right there that like that is what people have been funneled into, is there's less and less opportunities outside of what we would call email jobs nowadays.
I like the idea that I mentioned on the Yuppies episode, which is that the Yuppies never really went away. They just stopped being young. They became the executives instead of the aspiring executives.
And the term truly has become useless. When I was out skiing, I just struck up conversation with another Chicago guy, and I said that a lot of my friends live in Logan Square, and he's like, oh yeah, all the yuppies are moving out there. And I'm like, I live in River North, and people have called me a yuppie for living here. Like, this shows that no one knows what they're talking about. Like, it's hard to define, like, are yuppies creative, or are they purely working like corporate jobs? Like, I don't know, all these things. Like, it's maybe outlived its usefulness.
Maybe it's just like a socially acceptable slur for white people.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, we found it.
Yeah. But I don't think Simpson really defends the metrosexual like from plagiarism that effectively. I think because he basically just says that the metrosexual is different than yuppies because they don't wear shoulder pads, and then the metrosexual is different than dandies, another word for flâneurs, because they don't wear powdered wigs. But that's really not a good argument.
It's very within his interest to say that they're different. In order to get away with coining something.
I know. Because this is really how he's defined his career. It's like all over his website. It's like first thing on his Wikipedia page. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I think Simpson was like remiss to not see the similarities between the terms, because I think it is interesting that this seemingly has happened multiple times. Mm-hmm. One thing that does differentiate metrosexuals from yuppies and flâneurs is that there really isn't a female equivalent. For the flâneur, there was the flâneuse, which is the female term for that. Yeah. And then for yuppies, there were female yuppies. There wasn't even a modifier. And I think that yuppie women really fit in with that zeitgeist, because the yuppie movement had happened to coincide with second wave feminism and the shattering, or the attempted shattering, of the glass ceiling. So they just like found their angle into it. And for them, like dressing up and looking like a yuppie, it was a career move as opposed to just like looking hot for women.
No. Yeah, I think that, I don't know how much we touched on that in our like yuppies episode, but like men have always been working in offices in cities and trying to climb the ladder. But like for women, that's a much bigger change, that was happening in that period. Yeah, but I feel like when we remember yuppies, we just remember like Patrick Bateman and called it that.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about what like a female equivalent of metrosexuality would look like. It could just be straight women trying to look like lesbians.
That feels like a very like taking it at its like word value kind of thing of like, all right, doing what the other gay version of your gender is doing.
Yeah. But I don't know if women have ever truly done that, unless there's been a period where looking like a tomboy has become really popular.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm trying to think of like, the female view on this metrosexuality. I'm thinking about this article I read from this period that was like, my husband's a metrosexual. And this woman just kind of puts her husband on blast, but then kind of flexes him too. Because she's like, don't worry, he also watches sports and is tall, but he also cooks. Like, it just feels like, a cultural ephemera from that period where just it wouldn't get published today.
Yeah. When do you think, like, vanity does start to turn into narcissism?
When it's irritating, when it's noticeable, I think. Yeah.
Where I can identify a very clear line where I would then be able to say a metrosexual has gone too far and become self-obsessed. It's when I've encountered this before. You as a straight man, I don't know why people would be saying this to you. But to me as a gay guy, I've encountered straight people where they tell me that they would never do anything with someone of the same gender, but they would date themselves if they could.
Oh, if they had a clone of themselves?
Yeah, they're like, I would sleep with myself. I would marry myself. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had anyone say that to me. That is crazy. I think about with like noticeable and visible narcissism. The woman who cut my hair back in Las Vegas, she told me she met George Clooney and that she could tell that he was always looking for the nearest mirror to look at himself. Which I like. I don't know. She said a lot of crazy stuff, so I don't know if I fully believe that. But like, no, you can't let other people know that you're doing that.
Because like, I keep going back to this, but it's just like, why was he so cruel to them? He talks about David Beckham, and he describes his like interest in promoting his self-image as like equal ops narcissism, where basically like he wanted to have men enjoy his beauty as much as women.
There weren't like having every woman in the world attracted to you wasn't enough. He also wanted like every gay guy as well. That could be a little bit of projection or something into that. I don't know. Ragging on David Beckham was kind of the like national pastime for a bit. Which I guess, gets into the kind of retrosexual backlash. So this term was just, I feel like part of it was the media machine wanting to keep this thing going as long as they could of like, all right, the metrosexual articles are drying up. Let's start writing retrosexual articles.
Well, it wasn't the media machine. It was Mark Simpson himself who coined retrosexual, and he coined it to describe basically metrosexuals who had body hair.
I guess this gets into the kind of lumber sexuality that people talk about in the late 2000s, which was men who were still grooming extensively, but it was beard oil and just maintaining the beard. Or I picture this as like late 2000s is when that mall store Art of Shaving popped up.
Oh, I never saw that.
Yeah, they just like, it was a way that you could buy like the double-edged safety razors, the stuff I use, and then just like animal fat shaving creams and all that kind of fancy stuff, but in a safely masculine way.
Yeah. When I think about the retrosexual, I think about a man who's clean shaven but has chest hair. Because that, like, you know, people, I guess, just hated body hair that much. But this term, it got co-opted by other people besides Simpson, who then started to try to have their own take on it. Like, there was a book mentioned in a news article I'll link. It was like on retrosexuals, and it was the cover of it. It's this ad of a man blowing cigarette smoke in a woman's face from the 50s.
Oh, God. Yeah, so I think that there's kind of two types of men writing about retrosexuality. Because I'm going to say like men writing about it because I don't think it was really happening that much. I think it was the need to write about it outstripped the supply of it actually happening. Yeah. But I think that you could either look back to the immediate past and say like, oh, before men started wearing these scarves and skinny jeans, they were just regular dudes, you know, who like talking sports, drinking beer, and, you know, wearing a shirt that just wasn't dirty. That's a shirt. And so that's the near retrosexual, and the far retrosexual is something I guess I could be sorted into, which was just like, remember when men like knew how to buy a suit and like took care of themselves and were like well manicured, but still man's men and could, you know, change a tire but also tie a tie, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it's kind of always been a thing where there have been men peddling masculinity to other men?
I don't think there was you can't sell it if it's everywhere is one thing. So I think this recent thing of like, you know, who we had on the podcast, Gent Z, who's like literally selling masculinity to people. There needs to be a little bit of a crisis or a kind of like questioning of it in order to sell your version of it. Yeah. If it's everywhere, if it's the water you breathe, if everyone has an agreed upon idea of what a man is, then like you can't make money.
Makes sense. So now we can talk about Queer Eye for the Straight Guy.
Yes.
So the original series, it was called that. The newer series, the reboot in 2018, it got abbreviated to just Queer Eye.
Mm-hmm. Had you seen the old series?
I did a bit because I took a non-credit fashion course in high school, which wasn't like making clothes. We just talked about fashion. It was fun. But we watched a few episodes of that in high school. And I remember this one episode where one of the Fabulous Five, they just said like, straight guys are fun.
Straight guys are fun. Happy with I feel like I've received that sentiment on the gay rugby team, and I'm kind of like, happy I can entertain, I guess. Like, I'm a little clown for you.
Yeah. But I did watch a little bit of it on YouTube before this week, and the intro is good. I don't know the aesthetic. I wish we could ask Evan Collins.
Yeah, we'll enlist him for that. Yeah. I feel like his life is just like a constant inbox of just like, what's this aesthetic? What's this aesthetic? And then like we come in like, hey, it's us. Like, what's this aesthetic?
That's probably why he closed the Discord, so people couldn't just freely be like, hey, Evan, what is this?
Yeah. No. I mean, if you just charged $5 for analyzing stuff, that would be pretty good. Yeah, I remember catching a few episodes of it. I remember I was visiting my uncle in Chicago, and we just watched like HGTV. This was back in like 2012, 2013. And then I remember catching an episode of it and being like, oh, this is dated. Like, it would have just been like 8 years past its prime. But yeah, it just still felt so culturally far away.
Because your uncle's been an eligible bachelor for a long time. Do you think he's metrosexual?
I think he's been a guy who's like living in the city, and he's lived in like Las Vegas and LA. At this time, he was married to a woman, but I don't know. I think he's kind of dodged this whole thing, this whole like metrosexual discourse. I actually kind of thought, I guess I'm afraid that somehow he'd find the podcast. Unlikely. I think he would have been a very good candidate for Queer Eye for the Straight Guy in his kind of divorce era. But his new wife now has actually kind of turned him around a bit. She's bought him really nice clothes and got him a new haircut and new glasses and stuff. She kind of queer-eyed him in a really great way. But for a bit, I think he would have been a classic kind of candidate, because the guys they chose in this were, you know, voted for by their like family members. And it was often, they didn't just do straight men, but it was, yes, majority, as the title says, straight men. I remember an episode that I distinctly remember was a widower. And it was like his kids, I think, nominated him. And they were like, our dad cares so much about us. He gives everything to us, but he neglects himself a lot. Like, he doesn't really have a hobby, or he's not really engaged with his life. I think that's like the ideal target for the show.
Yeah. Because actually my sisters, they talked about trying to get my dad on the reboot. And my dad is a widower of 6 kids. And yeah, he's had a bit of a tragic life. So he probably would be able to get on if they ever did it in Chicago.
Yeah.
But the reboot, actually, they're filming it primarily in red states. They've done it in Georgia, Missouri, Texas, and Louisiana. 2 seasons were also filmed in purple states, Pennsylvania and Nevada. But I feel like the original series, it was actually about the straight and gay worlds coming together. They were creating a scenario for that to happen. And the reboot, honestly, I feel like it's creating a scenario for blue and red America to come in contact with each other.
Yeah. I mean, come to think of it, the old series episode I saw was a guy who lived in New York. And I feel like that is the place for straight men and gay men to interface. Because like gay men are there because it's New York, and straight men are there because it's New York, you know, like it has both the fashion world and the corporate ladder and money making and all that stuff. Like it's a good place to interface. And I think in the new series, the way they I noticed they do it is they use the blue city in a red state as their like base of operations to then reach out into the like suburbia or semi-rural and extract the targets. Because I remember them because they need to take them to the nice clothing store and to the like restaurant we're going to cook in and stuff. And they have to kind of do that like in actual Atlanta and then, you know, drive the guy into there.
Yeah, they definitely do that. But I like honestly prefer the original series. I think it's interesting seeing straight and gay men have earnest conversations about their different experiences. What the newer series does is like, it's too ostentatious and obvious what they're trying to do. Like episode 3 of season 1 is with a cop, and the cop was nominated by his friend. So they start out the episode by having the Fabulous Five get pulled over by a cop. And the rest of the episode, they keep going back to like conversations about police brutality and how scared they were and how actually this cop isn't that bad and maybe they're good ones. And it's just so like 2018 coded.
It is so just like, and this very special episode of Queer Eye, it's not just going to be gay stuff. It's also going to be race. Yeah. And I feel like that's out of a kind of like intersectional kind of motive, I think, in there, which is like trying to expand the scope of the show, which I guess is admirable. You can't just do the same gay guy, straight guy thing every time.
I mean, I don't like that very much. I'm not trying to be like reactionary or anything, but just as a gay guy, it's like most of the time now when I see the gay flag, it's to signal liberal values. It's not really about like the gay community. And I feel like the show is like that now too, where it's not just this one. There are other ones where it's like, oh, they find a Trump Pence sign in someone's house and they comment on it, or they use something as an opportunity to talk about how the Supreme Court just gave gay people the right to get married. And it's just like, it's not really the like, I don't know. It's just something's missing.
Yeah, it's just like, let's bring together NPR America and Walmart America. Like,
yeah, they even on that same cop episode, they like, the cop says he likes to bring his wife to Walmart on dates, and they're like, "What are you doing?"
That's crazy to me.
They're like, "You need to bring your family to the opera."
It's like, oh, that's kind of that's something I didn't put in the docket, but I was thinking about, which is my like favorite sitcom, Frasier, because I think he's a type of guy that gets forgotten in all of this. You could call him a yuppie, I guess, and the show ran like just into the early 2000s too, so you could call him metrosexual. But I describe myself as like a Frasier style heterosexual, where I'm just a straight guy who likes tailoring and going to the opera, I guess, because I went for the first time. But no. That's the guy who gets forgotten in all of this, is the Frasier style man.
Yeah. And then there have been international adaptations of Queer Eye, one in Germany and the other in Brazil. And then one season of Queer Eye was also filmed in Japan. You said you watched a little bit of that.
No, not enough to comment on it. I think they just wanted to go to Japan. Yeah. Basically. I think that's too much. I mean, they had to have a translator there, is one thing. I think that's kind of their reach, like extending their grasp in a way. There.
Yeah. I know. They've had so much success, though. I mean, these are 5 of the luckiest gay guys on the planet.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean, some are luckier than others on the show. I mean, poor Bobby Burke has to like actively renovate a home in 1 week when Karamo just has to like go bowling with them, which is everyone observes that on it, but it is crazy. Yeah. And he did eventually quit. Bobby, the home interiors one. I think they just worked him too damn hard.
Do you have a favorite of the 5?
I find Anthony Porowski kind of charming, I have to admit.
Which one is that one?
That's the food one, the new food one.
I feel like he over-explains it. But...
Yeah. It's funny because he is like this gay Nepo baby in a way, because just he was like a personal friend of the previous season's cooking guy.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was kind of like self-selected, and he never went to cooking school. So people hold that against him, which... Many great chefs didn't go to cooking school, but also he wasn't like working in some highly respected kitchen either. He was just kind of like a guy who likes food. And then he got flack for putting sour cream in guacamole, which people do. So at first I was with everyone and coming down on him for that, but I don't know.
Maybe. It doesn't sound like it would taste bad.
No.
So it'd be okay. But my favorite, I kind of like Jonathan the most. Because I like how he has this excuse to just touch straight guys' faces. He's like, "Oh, let me touch your hair in the first 5 minutes of meeting you."
He got like soft canceled for just like being mean, I think, which is unfair. I don't know. He does have that kind of like toxic positivity to him. Like maybe I'm applying this retroactively, but I feel like I was like, no, there's something behind this guy. He's actually mean. I just know it.
Yeah. No, I didn't get a chance to rewatch any of the gay episodes for this week, but as a gay guy,
episodes
with gay guys where they redo a gay guy's appearance. Because I don't know, I typically experience like condescension or shade when I talk to other gay men, and I want to watch one and pick up if they do that ever, you know, because there's probably a bit of that, you know. Yeah. But I did watch, Queer Eye Brazil when it came out, because I do this sometimes where like I just want to like brush up in Portuguese. So it doesn't even matter like what the show is. Yeah. I'll just like I watched Iron Chef Brazil because they're speaking Portuguese. But there's this one character on the Brazilian version, Freddy. That's how you say Fred with a Portuguese accent. But he has these like bangs. He's like a black guy, but he has these dreads that he's styled, and they're in these like really short. Anyway, it's such a sleek haircut.
No, I realize this is a haircut that people malign for being every black character in a video game is like given this haircut. Maybe it's because it's easy to do in 3D. And I think this is also in a lot of like sci-fi video games. And it reads as a kind of sci-fi haircut. It's kind of like Gary Oldman's character in The Fifth Element, like having a undercut into like flopped over look.
I can see that.
Yeah. But I forgot that it actually exists in real life, and it's not just something done by like video game studios.
Yeah.
But no, it's a good look. I think it must be an interesting show in Brazil, because my Brazilian friend on the gay rugby team said that hanging out with like gay American guys feels like hanging out with straight Brazilian guys. There's just less of a separation between the two, because like Brazilian guys dance and care about clothes.
Yeah, they're more emotional too. Like there's no social taboo against men crying. They can do it whenever they want.
Wow, big.
Yeah. And then as part of research for this week, I found a mini documentary called Metrosexuals. It's from 2004. It was made for someone's college class, and it was filmed in Chicago. But this gives a good impression of what the average metrosexual looks like, as opposed to Mark Simpson's David Beckham version, which is very celebrity focused.
Yeah. Yeah, these are just like clean cut guys in dress shirts that are unbuttoned.
Yeah. Maybe they're wearing a necklace. And they say that they do all this stuff with skincare, but the video is so low quality that you can't see it.
Yeah, everyone's just kind of like mushy anyway, so you have to take their word for it.
Yeah. But they do mention in it that they go tanning, so maybe that was a thing. But yeah, too many micro trends to pin down with this one.
Yeah.
And then did you want to talk about that other short video, the one?
Yeah, this is the local news thing. What is a metrosexual? A 2003 trend that came with the success of Queer Eye. I think we should put that in the episode notes there too.
We are pretty good. Put that.
Also, just the idea of like, they have a guy like getting a, mojito pedicure, which costs $120 back then, which is crazy. I think they juiced that number. I don't think it actually cost that much.
Yeah.
But it's just very funny to think of like, all right, and so for this shoot, we will meet you at the pedicure salon. We'll interview you during it. It's all very fake, but very funny.
Yeah. It was funny to see that too, because I saw this TikTok video where someone was getting like a leg massage where they were like putting gold leaf on their legs and then pouring like tequila on their legs as well. And so people were just commenting like, how is this good for your skin?
That's going to dry you out. It feels like we're losing knowledge here, because even as far back as American Psycho, he talks about like, I use an aftershave with little to no alcohol because it dries you out.
Yeah.
I think it is actually a good thing to know.
And then now we can kind of get to the end of metrosexuality. So it was coined by Mark Simpson in 1994. It then became popular in 2002. And then according to Google Trends, it was at its most popular when they started collecting data in 2004. And then by 2006, it was below 25% of their peak search volume. So by 2006, that's like a safe time to say the fad was out.
Yeah. It's like the way that most fads end is that everyone absorbs a bit of it. We talked about this with hippie stuff, where like eventually you could just buy flower print stuff in department stores and everyone was a little bit hippie in some way. And new age spiritual beliefs were just kind of the less crazy ones were mainstreamed into that. But this is less of a self-described movement. Also, this is a prescriptive kind of fad. It was applied to people. It wasn't really like held by people. So I think it's much easier to die when that's the case as well too.
Yeah. It's a good point that it just got absorbed by what came next. Because what came next was the like Attitude Era symbols of violence, edginess version of masculinity that was pretty anti-gay. And I think that Axe body spray shows how hygiene continued to be important, but it was in this different way. Like Axe body spray, for people who don't know, their ad campaign is one of the most distinct. I can really envision it. It was all these commercials of men where they'd spray Axe on themselves and then women would flock over to them.
Yeah.
And it was just like very horny, and it's like the strongest example of sex sells I can think of.
Yeah. No, things got pretty daring with that in the 2000s. Yeah, I think the end of this was, I don't know, Old Spice is how it survives, and the kind of like, and then also the Dos Equis most interesting man in the world. I think it goes into the kind of lumbersexual art of manliness. It was taking the same idea of care, but it was turning it more into this kind of, it was getting more rugged, basically, but taking the kind of ethos of care behind it.
What I think was missing was that it then became socially unacceptable to admire your own appearance, because the standard for heterosexuality was so high that I then think that men, in order to seem straight, they tried to convince themselves to be repulsed by their own image. They then had to rely on ad campaigns more than they did previously.
Interesting. Relying more on ad campaigns. I don't know. I guess it is always just really fed to us. It's hard to like really determine where this came from, because it feels like it is so artificial in a sense, like it's sold to us by like advertising to men, and then these advertisements are in the same magazines that are publishing the articles denigrating metrosexuals. It feels like it's this just self-fulfilling thing.
Positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
So this is when metrosexuality ended. I then think it's interesting to note that there was like a fourth wave of the men move to cities and then become more stylish phenomenon. This is like a think piece I happened to find in high school. It's, "Are you a heterosexual male diva?" Which can be abbreviated to HMD. But basically the person who wrote the article, they were talking about how straight men around 2012, they started to have the same habits that metrosexuals did with caring about fashion. But what they did that was different, and this is interesting, is they started to consume gay media in this way that metrosexuals and yuppies and flâneurs never would. Like they were watching Paris is Burning. They talk about watching female-centric reality TV shows, and they don't mention RuPaul's Drag Race, but this is around when that started to be a thing.
I don't know if I really encountered this type of guy. I don't know. Unless I mean,
the fact that you watched Queer Eye with your uncle.
Yeah. It was on TV. It was on network TV.
I know, but the thing is, like, in the 90s or the earlier 2000s, like, if you were a family watching TV and gay people came on TV, your mom would turn it off.
I can see that. That's funny. Yeah, but this term didn't take off at all. This 2012 Vice article didn't turn into a big cultural, it didn't spawn other think pieces and anti-think pieces and stuff.
Yeah. I think it's a victim of what Evan Collins had said on the Nymph alumni episode he did with them, where basically, like, if the term you coin isn't catchy enough, generally if it's too long, people won't like it. Like, even just the first word, heterosexual, it's too long. And then
You've already lost.
People don't like it. But honestly, I love it.
I think the portmanteau is very handy here. I think Evan Collins agrees with that, definitely, because a catchy single word portmanteau will get you a lot further than an abbreviation, an acronym, and all that.
Yeah, maybe hetero diva would have worked.
Ooh, yeah, that could have been good.
I don't know. They need to make it sound male still. But and then do you think we might be in a fifth wave with the like straight twink look?
I think so. I think that we're this is trickier because I feel like we're not breaking new ground. We're trying to identify something that's also in the midst of happening, and things are moving too fast with TikTok, and there's a lot of sub trends. We're trying to pin down a certain style of thinking that unites all of them, which is men caring about clothes. But I think this is veering into an also men caring about capital F fashion as well.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about it, I just think about the gay guys who get labeled as twinks by the general public, because that alone is, it irks me a bit, honestly, because I think of twink as being a pejorative term. But also it's like these guys, their BMI is average. Like, they're not even that like rail thin.
Yeah, are we going? Yeah, it feels like the word twink is being used more. People say twink death. People describe Timothée Chalamet as twinky.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. I think that there's like, at the same time, there are existing two male beauty standards kind of in harmony, which is that Jason Momoa and Timothée Chalamet are both being held up as male attractiveness.
Like the dad bod.
That's the thing, though, because that dad bod would be in the middle, actually, because Jason Momoa is like shredded, ripped, all that, and then Timothée Chalamet is twinky and otter-like. And in the middle, you'd have guys that are attractive due to having like dad bods or a kind of like Paul Rudd, aw shucks charm, everyman thing. So I don't know. I part of me wants to say there actually are like more ways to be a man nowadays.
Yeah,
but it's really just more
slots.
There's more slots that you can fit in there.
Yeah.
I've jokingly said that like my slot is not being used right now of like clean cut guy who isn't leaning into the twink look kind of thing, because I feel like I was on a date recently and a girl said I'm like the first guy on Hinge who didn't have a mustache in a while. I wasn't doing that. Like every man has a mustache right now.
I'm a fan of mustaches personally, but I think that the straight men who have them generally have red flags.
Yeah. I this girl then kind of went on to say that it's kind of a normie thing. Like having like tattoos and a mustache is like a normie trait now, or before it was like an alt thing to do.
Man, the world we live in.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think we've used, so for the look happening right now of a kind of ostentatious, flashy guy, I think we've used the term like 70s queerbaiter. There's also like the male manipulator look.
Yes.
So that would be like center part, mustache, either very tight fitting and loose, tight fitting top, loose fitting top over it, you know? So like mesh athletic shirt underneath, and then like open button up shirt on top of it.
Yeah, I think about like the holiday mesh lace men's shirt, which you called Italian knits.
Yeah, Italian knits or like resort shirts. But those are, I don't know. I've come dangerously close to getting them, but I'm kind of happy I hung back and watched that trend.
I don't like
kind of
don't buy them.
Yeah, no, I think I'll just stick with polos instead. But yeah, I kind of think about this video that this wasn't in our Discord, was it? Was in the other one. Ash Callahan, women's fashion YouTuber, made this video discussing menswear as a woman, and she talks about fashion bros and fashion guys, and then she stitches together this very good kind of cornucopia of TikToks of guys who are very into fashion.
Yeah.
And the way it looks like nowadays is crop top, very baggy jeans, almost in like a bell shape, kind of, where they really bow out at the knees.
In tasses.
What? And
in tasses. It's like the thing columns do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, shit, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think they would say that, but yeah, no, you totally nailed it. And then loafers at the bottom too. And this look really pisses me off, Nathan. I don't know. The videos were summoning something in me that I didn't really like to see in myself. Yeah, there's this kind of...
You wanted to beat them up.
Yeah, there's this very visible preening to it, which is just the guys like fussing with the pants and like pulling out the knees and then like swaying and looking and doing these weird little hand motions and hands on hips and stuff. I don't know, like it's just, I don't like it.
Well, you know where that's probably coming from? It's from those other videos where you see these on TikTok where it's a model at a photo shoot and they're striking poses really quick, you know, and it's just it's acting like you're being photographed when you're not. You're being filmed for TikTok.
Yeah, I just know that they're in their quiet apartment and they like probably asked their roommate to be be quiet for a bit so that they could take this TikTok. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of coming off as a catty bitch in this period of the program. But like I want guys to care about how they dress. And that's what I say. And then they start caring about how they dress. And I go, no, not like that. You're annoying me.
Yeah. No, I think it's like good to talk about this because I do think it's happening. But identifying new trends isn't really our wheelhouse. We're a lot more retrospective with our cultural analysis. But I think someone needs to do it, and no one's really hitting the nail on the head, in part because I think in order for an analysis of the fifth wave of the men moving to cities and becoming more stylish phenomenon, they're going to have to talk about how straight men are literally pretending to be gay now. Like they're saying they're queer, they're being a bit coy about what their sexuality is. Yeah. And that's not something you can prove. It's very sensitive for people and it would piss people off. But also that's the only way you'd go viral and then, you know, get your term to be as viral as Mark Simpson's.
I was at a party recently and people were gossiping about a guy and they said that he was pretending to be bisexual for clout. It's like, what is happening? like how have we even gotten to this point? That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, was he painting his nails or?
Oh yeah, that I would say he dressed in a way similar to that I've described, the 70s queer baiter kind of thing. He has a mustache. Yeah. But no, I guess it's it is metrosexually spirited in that way. A guy who's in touch, who's trying to signal that he's in touch with his feminine side or with his gay side and doesn't want to actually do it, but wants the benefits that come from that.
Yeah. But I think this is fundamentally different than what happened with metrosexuality. I really like your idea about how men's fashion and gay fashion, they happen to converge right in that moment, whereas they're usually not in sync. Yeah. But now it's, you know, straight men want to look like gay guys because they have the freedom to, and also it's cooler to be gay, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
But someone did try to coin a term for this, brosexual, but you don't think it's very catchy.
No. Yeah, because it's also just like open to misinterpretation. Yeah. And I tried to find so this article is 2024, so that's pretty good and close. And it's the rise of the brosexual. And they also try and choose like famous athletes to be the poster children of this.
Travis Kelce.
Yeah, they bring up Travis Kelce and they have a photo of him in like very baggy, loud pants and then like a flowing unbuttoned shirt, and he's got jewelry and he's got a very flashy bag. Other articles say that it's like guys who are like really chummy with their friends and touchy too, so that's getting distracted as well. And then I also got very confused by the term baby girl as well, because that's this term people are like, oh yeah, Jacob Elordi is a baby girl and so is Pedro Pascal, and these are like hot men who women also find like sweet and approachable too. So everyone's trying to get their slice of the metrosexual kind of like coinage type of article.
I mean, Mark Simpson continued throughout his career to try to recreate the success of it, like with retrosexual and then pornosexual, which is another thing I don't really care about.
Sport, porn, sexual is how he portmanteaued that. And that's like, that's really reaching.
Yeah. But back to the brosexual article, they mentioned something, or a quote from it. A brosexual, they would never dream of distancing himself from the queer community in order to differentiate or defend his interest in fashion and grooming. And to me, that just sounds like they would never dare elucidate their sexuality and possibly lose social clout.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what that sounds like. They're holding up such a positive way of like, oh, they'd never be homophobic. It's like, hey, no one's asking them to be homophobic. People are asking them to clarify. And they realize that there's more to be gained from being coy. And I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. But do you think there's an urban element to the latest iteration? I feel like it's the most like social media driven.
It's the most like bedroom style, I feel. Ash Callahan actually brings up like when she's naming all the components of it, she names the 3 fashion components and then she says zebra crossing, which is what British people call crosswalks. And I think that is included in a lot of these because it is actually selling the urbanist component of it. Like, and when I saw guys like this, I was like in Manhattan, like that's where I saw the widest pants that I have seen to this point worn by a human this decade. But yeah, so I think there is a part of like yeah, I'm in city life. I go to cool bars and restaurants and stuff, and I dress like this.
Yeah. Well, now moving to the city or staying in the city has clout in this way that it kind of didn't in the past, where it's like people are getting priced out. If you're staying, you must be succeeding if you're able to afford it. But yeah, thank you for doing this episode. It came together well. We still need to find an image for the episode artwork, probably David Beckham.
Yeah, that feels like a good candidate there.
We'll see.
Yeah, this is really fun. I feel like this is a separate but nice through line to our kind of thesis we've talked about, where, we're talking about what has been lost after the silent generation and, cities and all that. But I think what you were saying, the interesting part of the first season of Queer Eye is like, what is the mismatch? What do straight guys not understand about gay guys? What do gay guys not understand about straight guys? And I feel like that's a good thing that we're able to touch on. I feel like it's a good cachet that a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, like we're oftentimes showing our perspectives, but not even in a like forced way. It's just like we're interested in masculinity and men's issues, but from different angles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we're also maybe the worst candidates for it because I don't, not that I'm a pick me or something. I don't think I'm a very typical straight guy in a lot of ways. And you're definitely not a very typical gay guy, as you've like attested to. But yeah, maybe we need to be a little more normal to make this work.
That's what our guests are for.
Exactly.
But yeah, thank you. Again, those 4 things we mentioned in the beginning, if you want to do them, rate our show, subscribe to us on Patreon, leave a comment, follow us on Instagram. If you can do those things, we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, some of my friends have told me that they listen to the podcast when they're on like long drives and stuff. So when we say this stuff, they can't just like pull out their phone and do it. But I'm going to tell them now, pull off to the side of the road and do this stuff right now.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Don't crash. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.